welcome back to Brokenness Meets Grace. We are in our original setup today. And we are so happy and so blessed to have a guest this week. We'd like to welcome Ume Tozama to the show this week. Please introduce yourself, Mama.
Hi, Tozama Lande. Thank you. Nice to be here and thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you having here. We're so happy to be able to continue with our identity series, which is what we're going to continue with today. And today we're covering it's a very difficult topic, but an important one in the sense that a lot of our identity is misplaced and centered around how we see ourselves after a loss. So today we're going to be covering identity and loss, and how all of that ties into brokenness, and how all of it, of course, comes back to God's grace. So without any further delays, I think it's important to understand that there's various forms of loss. Immediately when a person talks about loss, I think in most cases we think about the loss of somebody in our life or whatever, but we're going to be covering the different types of loss that we can experience, because I think we attach ourselves to people, to things so much that when they become removed from us for whatever reason, it really alters our identity and it alters how we see ourselves, how we see the world. And we're going to be talking about that today, what is your input on what loss is?
Sure. I think loss is a void. I think it's a void in that it is tangible, it is heavy, it is significant, and it is remembered when it's not there. When something that was there is removed, taken away, altered in some form. It's altering because you feel it, and there's a lasting impact on you as an individual, and it carries through. But also it impacts who you think you are, because I think we get so prone to finding comfort in things and people, that we attach ourselves to things, and when things or people are taken away from us, it alters that identity, who we thought we were through those things or people, or just how we fit, as a puzzle piece in that space. So I think it's definitely, a void. That's a word that just keeps coming to my mind, is that it's a void. It's an emptiness of something that was there, that was significant, but now it's taken away.
Definitely. And you, Mama, what's your understanding or definition of loss?
I think she said a mouthful, and what I can add over and above what she said is that it's something that other people may not understand. It's something that you feel as an individual, and it's difficult to explain it, because I guess we have many faces. You may put on a brave look and people think all is well, but that void is there and it's so strong. So it's something that you feel as a person.
Definitely. And I think at some point everybody has experienced it in one shape or form. What's your personal experience with loss, Mom, and how have you come into it and seen it?
I guess for me, the recent one, which is a journey that I'm still going through, is losing my husband after being married for 32 years. So you can imagine that he's just been part of me. And losing him in 2021 through COVID. So that is the journey that I'm still going through. And as I say, it's something that I can't explain, that I personally feel. And maybe when you look at me, until I tell you, you won't figure out that happened to me. But it is a huge loss. And like you correctly said, that maybe we attach it to a person. But even when you lose a person, there is a lot of other small losses that surround this main one that people are looking at. Because when you lose somebody, you lose friends. The so-called friends, they disappear. And people you thought they were there for you and you can count on. You lose family. Even the very close family when you expect them to walk and journey with you, and then all of a sudden they are not there, and there's a lot. There's just a loss. The loss of income is not that important, but it's also a loss, especially if the spouse is somebody who's been working. Then you have to juggle around and learn to adjust in one salary over two salaries, and most importantly, you lose yourself in the process, because I think I'm also in a process now of rediscovering who am I, because I kind of lost myself in the process. I don't know who I am anymore, but yeah, I'm slowly trying to find myself.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a difficult thing to experience, and I mean, 32 years with somebody, I can only begin to imagine the kind of connection that's been forged over that time period. How you basically become one person, you know, and having to live without that person, having to experience life without that person being there anymore. It must be a huge.
And you even begin to look alike.
I've been told. People say that you begin to look alike.
Yeah, I know. With my husband, when I went to visit him in the offices one day, then this one colleague of his then saw me walking out, and then he came running to him and said, "You know, I want to marry your husband. I don't even want to do anything, but just tell me how much I will pay them. I just want to marry him straight." And he stood there and was like, "Oh, your sister, I want to marry your sister." He said, "But you've never seen my sister." I said, "No, I saw you walking her out." And he just looked at him and said, "But that was my wife." So this colleague just turned and walked away because he didn't know what to say anymore. So that's what happens when you are together for a long time. You start looking alike.
Sure. It must have been a very difficult transition to make. You know, and for you, Shishi, what's your personal experience with loss or understanding of it?
I think now that we're unpacking it now, I think all of us experience loss, you know, in many different forms or shapes. I think obviously a loss of a person is a lot more permanent, so it's more heavy. It bears more weight. Because it's not something that, in a sense, in the physical sense, you can get back. You know, if they are gone, they are gone. But I think all of us really experience some form of loss, and I think what Twazama was saying about adjusting and finding a way to find yourself again, to work with what you have, you know. So, of course, I've never experienced anything as painful as a personal loss to that regard. But I think I've experienced loss in ways where things that have held valuable that I've held dear to my heart, you know, have been taken away from me. You know, things that I've treasured, things that I've loved, you know, or even a position, you know, feeling valuable in a space and having that taken away from me because somebody else is now valuable, you know. I think that's a space of loss for me personally. So I can't pinpoint a particular thing, but I can say I think throughout our walks in life, we all experience some form of loss, and it's all about adjusting and trying to make the current work, you know, and making that better for you. But it's always rooted in attachment, you know, and I think that is the problem, you know. And I think God is also trying to teach us that when He takes certain things away from us, that we shouldn't attach ourselves to people or things, because things are transitory, things come and go, you know, people come and go. And are you able to do life without that person, without that thing, you know? So I don't want to say anything that will minimize the loss of mama, because for me that is the ultimate, you know. But yeah, like I said, it's many different forms of loss that you know I battle with on a personal level, and like Mama also said, it's different from person to person. My loss could be trivial to yours, you know. For you, losing a car, it may be more weighty than for me losing, I don't know, a job or something. You know, it doesn't bear the same weight from person to person. But I think the core is definitely attachment and readjusting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're so right, because the common denominator in whatever form of loss, and like Mama said, it feels different
Yeah.
to you, whatever it is. But the common denominator where loss is concerned is that feeling of I've been stripped of something that I need to function.
Yeah.
You know, we develop these attachments, you know, to people and to things because they become our way of doing life.
Yes.
You know, they become our way of surviving. You know, it keeps us going. You know, it gives us that crutch. You know, that support. And of course, when we lose people in our lives, it's like the wind has just been knocked out of you, because how do you do life now without this person who's been in your life for 32 years? How do you recover? You know, and it's just this concept of saying that we as people will always need a crutch. You know, we will always need something to hold on to help us through life,
like a lifeline,
a lifeline of some sort. And a lot of the times when that is taken away from us, that's when we start to unravel, you know. And for me personally, I also thankfully have not been in the position where I experienced severe loss of a person close to me or whatever. But for me, it was more a loss of the one thing that I held dear to me, and that's control. You know, I've always needed stability of some sort. I've always needed to have a level of control, to feel like if I'm in control, then everything will go according to plan. Everything will go according to the structure that I've set in my mind. And the moment that life happened and I had to lose control, basically it felt like losing myself. You know, it felt like I was being put in a position where I don't know who I am anymore. If I can't control outcomes, or if I don't have a plan A or a plan B or a plan C to things, everything falls apart. And in a lot of ways, I see that now as having a need to be in control, you know. And for me, that's been the biggest adjustment, because it's only recently where I've just literally had to fall flat on my face to realize that I don't have things in control. And for me, that's been a major adjustment over my life, because it's been a series of falling and getting up, falling and getting up, and falling and getting up, to finally just surrender. I don't know how to do this. I can't do this, you know. So for me, that's my experience with loss. And I must say, it feels like a little bit of that is getting lost every day. You know, it's not something that just happened overnight. It's something that I can just suddenly deal with. But every day, there's a level of control that's been stripped from me, you know. And it was painful at first because I was fighting it. But daily, I'm learning to understand that it's for my good, so that in my surrendered state, I'm more able to actually receive the help that I can get, you know. So yeah, that's my experience with that. And I think just going back to what you were saying about needing people to live through life and needing things to hold on to make life a little bit easier. How did you manage, Mama? How did you live through that loss? How did you come out of it? How are you still going through it?
I think maybe while I said I've lost people, maybe those people were making way for the ones who came in my life. Because now I also met people. And I think they helped me a lot. The first strong support structure was my kids. I have 3 kids, or we have 3 kids, and they're my support system. And I think, like you said, we agreed right from the very onset that while I've lost a husband, they've lost a father. And all 4 of us are going to grieve differently, because we experienced him differently. And we need to allow ourselves to grieve, and we just need to be on the lookout. If I see you don't look okay, then I must give you your space. And I think we did that successfully. And I must also thank my church. The minister came, and I couldn't understand, because I was still raw in February after losing him in January, and he introduced to me a program, a 13-week program, Grief Share. And I was like, I don't even know what is this program all about. I remember when I went with my first daughter, and we said, okay, let's go and try it out, because we're still vulnerable. And yeah, as I said, very raw. The pain was still there and very intense. And we attended this session in Willows, Pretoria East. And when we went there, strangely, we were the only blacks, the two of us, all these white people, and sitting around the table with a box of tissue, water, and chocolate, and you're like trying to make sense of
what is happening?
What is happening here? And who's expecting me to cry because I'm not gonna cry, and then not gonna take water, and I'm don't have a sweet tooth after all. So. But then the first session, and we agreed before we even stepped in there that we're just coming to test waters. And if we feel this is not for us, then we are leaving.
Yeah.
So the first no was seeing all these whites and you're really black. And you're like, I'm lost here. Cultures are different. So surely whatever's going to happen here won't talk to me.
Yeah.
But then strangely, after the very first session, when we got into the car, without even asking her how was the session, she said, we are continuing. She's the only child who calls me Sylvia, by the way, because there was one time they were calling me, all of them, Mama, Mama, and I said, you know, for once, can you stop calling me Mama and use my name? And she said, okay, from today onwards, I'm calling you
I've felt like that many times. I've told her many times that if I hear Mama one more time.
So she's calling me Sylvia, and she was like, Sylvia, I think I'm going to attend all the teen weeks. I think the beauty of it is that it was a space where we were free, a space where we could talk about everything and anything, a space which we shared with people who had lost somebody in their lives, but it differed, be it a child or a husband or a fiance. I remember clearly there was one couple, they lost a child in Vietnam during COVID. They couldn't go to Vietnam, they couldn't bury their son. Their friends took care of everything in Vietnam. And they couldn't even get the ashes of their child from Vietnam because they couldn't travel there and those ones couldn't. So at some point I was like, Lord, I thought my case was serious, it was worse, but this one is just beyond imagination. I mean, you just watch from a phone, a distance, your child being buried, and you can't even have the ashes. And they tried through the embassies, but they were not winning. And then there was also one who lost a fiance. The guy left at 8:45 in the evening, rushing to be home before 9 o'clock, because that was the cut-off time. And along the way, she got involved in an accident and passed on. So there were different stories, and the beauty about that place is that you're allowed to cry. You just cry and nobody will stop you from crying, and you share your story freely, and it kind of prepared us because it deals with different stages of grief and whatever is going to happen in your life. Like the first one was the first chapter was why, and I guess we all go through that question, why, and I heard that question, why him? There were old people far older than him who had COVID but survived. Why did you take him? So it was kind of anger towards God. Why did you take him? We were just counting years. By the way, this year December, he would be retiring from the SANDF. So we were counting, we were planning about retirement together. So why did you take him? Why this, why that? And why not that other old man or that other people who have had life, and you know, those sorts of things. And again, you get angry at him. You are a soldier. Why didn't you fight this? You know, so there's a lot of whys, and we had to deal with those. And dealing with his possessions, dealing with this and that. So it covered a whole lot of things. And I guess each time I got to a certain step, then that course would have prepared me already on how to handle it and how to deal with those. So that was the support system that I got that helped me. But while it's 2 years and 7 months, it's still not easy. Because you're learning to take one day at a time.
Yes.
There are days even now that it feels like it happened yesterday, and you also wonder, what triggered this whole thing, and it will be small triggers. But I can say now I can even go to a mall.
Yeah.
Initially, it was even difficult. You go to a mall and you just see somebody dressed like him, and you run towards that person, and then you realize,
It's not him.
by the way, it's not him. When it's time for him to come back from work, and you're just waiting, okay, he will be here any minute, and then it hits you that this person is gone.
That's heavy.
Yeah, it's very heavy. Like you said, it's a permanent loss.
Yeah.
And when you think about that by the way, this person is taken permanently, then it becomes something else. But I think with the support of people, and I was sharing earlier on that maybe I'll be white in my next life. Because I've met these white ladies and they are pensioners. I guess the youngest is 62. And they're so amazing, they're so beautiful, They've taken me like their own daughters. Yeah, we speak every day. They've introduced me into many things. It's just so crazy. And one of them, when I met her and we would talk, and I was like, no, I'm busy doing this and that. And then she looked at me and she said, you're hiding behind your pain, behind all what you're doing. And she could see right through it. And I was like, but what did she say? And when I got home, I broke down. So yeah, they are so good. They are so good.
It's amazing. And I mean, it's terrible to go through that, but it's great that God sort of buffers our periods of transition, and like you said, it was losing of people, but in the same time, he brought people into your space that he knew would help you adjust or would help you make sense of life now as it is. And it's just from that perspective that as hard as it is to not understand why, because I'm sure all those why questions that you had about the loss till today are still not answered. It's about finding the space between going from not having an answered why to, okay, how? How do I get through this? How do I get by? How do I keep going? And that's where he comes in and he fills in those gaps,
And I guess the one thing with us, everybody who lost a loved one during COVID, I guess the pain will forever be there. Not because it's a special period or anything, but what was mostly difficult during that period is that you couldn't visit your loved one in the hospital.
Yes.
And you had to rely on phones. And even the nurses were overwhelmed. Like with my kids, we chose to call in the evenings because it was better with the evening stuff. But during the day, it was just so terrible. And whenever you call, you get the same answer every day. Okay, I'm Mrs. Land, I'm checking how is my husband doing. Oh, still the same. And you're like, okay, can you explain what is still the same? Is he responding to treatment? Ma'am, I told you your husband is not well, so he's still the same. And tomorrow again,
the same.
I told you still the same. And I got tired of hearing that phrase, still the same. And then we just stuff, then we're kind of better. We know at least there is progress, but continue praying. But then on the day 5, then that was it.
That's terrible. And I mean, you don't get a form of closure. You haven't watched them deteriorate and prepared yourself mentally for what will happen. You can't go and tell them that you're there.
I remember on New Year's Day we even had a card, and my kids insisted that let's have a card, and we all signed, we all wrote messages, and on the 3rd he was gone, and we had to go. When I had to go and collect the stuff, the card was there. He never even saw it.
Sure, it's heavy.
Sure. And I remember with us because we also had a case of COVID where it looked like it was just very meek. Where all of us had it in the house, but my mother took a turn for the worst and she was hospitalized. And it was during that time where you couldn't just go to the hospital. And I remember for us, because my sister took my mother to the hospital, but she could only get to a certain point, right? And I remember when she came back for her, and we couldn't even go because it could only take one person at a time. And she came back and she's like, she's just so scared that that would have been the last interaction she had with her, because we couldn't see her, we couldn't speak to her,
Say goodbye.
we couldn't say goodbye.
Yeah.
You know, so I can only imagine that that was the biggest part, that COVID didn't even give us closure. It didn't allow us closure.
It really did.
You know, it stripped that human element away from us. And I
That
think
was
that's what
so
you mean.
terrible. That was so terrible. I guess the first time when he was not okay, we went to hospital, and then he was tested. Within an hour, they gave him the results, but they didn't admit him. Then we went back home, and I guess some few days down the line, he was diabetic, so he couldn't eat, and then became weak, and then he went and he was admitted. So it was strange, because you walk in there, and when the sisters ask what is the problem, no, he's not eating, he was here last week, he was diagnosed of COVID. Okay, then go and isolate yourself. And you're like, but I need to see what's going to happen to him. Okay, wait, but you're still here. And I was like, okay, I'm here because I need to see what's going to happen to him. Now he's going to be admitted, but I want to see him going. And then I had to wait on that day. The whole day I was in hospital until that day's staff then knocked off, and then came the night shift. And one sister said, if you're brave enough, you can go and see him. I said, even if it means I die with him, that's my husband, I'm going in. Then I went, I saw him, I said, I'm going home, you'll be admitted and all that. The next morning, I was told they couldn't get a bed in ICU. So he was still there, and they said he wanted tea. They gave him tea. So they said, please bring him something to eat. And I was excited. So I went to buy some stuff, and then I went there, and the sister said, if you're brave enough, you can take the stuff to him. Then I went to him, said, this is your stuff, and he asked for something to drink. He drank, and then he lied. And because I was just kind of, he's coming back home, then I took my phone, I took a picture so that I could show him when he gets home.
This is what you look
This is what you look like. So that's all I'm remaining with, is that very last picture.
image.
That was the last time I saw him.
Sure. Wow, yeah, that is heavy. And our next episode of Brokenness Meets Grace. Always remember, it may be broken, but it's in the hands of the potter. Bye, guys.